our world is from the natural bases. Earth, air, fire, and water. The four elements from which all things are created.
This is Chaos Theory
and Cosmic Chisme,
where we put the chaos into theory and spill the tea about the connections between us, nature, and everything in between.
So join us in unraveling the cosmic secrets and coincidences we just couldn't ignore.
Happy Halloween, Cosmic Chismosos.
Happy Halloween!
So this is our bonus episode that you all have been waiting for. Our little gift to you.
That's right, we're recording the day before.
When this comes out, it'll be the day before Halloween. So tomorrow's Halloween. This is sort of like an All Hallows Eve. Remember when that used to be like a thing? I feel like when we were kids, like All Hallows Eve felt like...
No, I actually don't remember that.
You were sheltered.
No, yeah, I was sheltered.
No, I just felt like it was, because I think that was like the night that like teenagers would like egg houses and like throw toilet paper on the trees and stuff like that.
I remember in school how there were more days for trick-or-treating.
Yeah, that's
than there were now. I feel like today it's Halloween and that's it.
Yeah.
So...
Do people even trick-or-treat anymore?
They do.
Yeah?
They do.
People. Children.
Because I take my kid and we've gone to each a different neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
And he can get some candy, but I also feel like people are a little bit cheaper on it, though.
Really?
Yeah. You were definitely able to get more candy back in the day than now.
So I was doing some research, and I learned that the origins of Halloween actually... Well, some of the Halloween traditions, like we were talking about trick-or-treating and that kind of stuff, and of course, like, dressing up and all of that, actually originated in Ireland, of course.
Really?
Yes. Ireland's just everywhere.
Ireland has been... We've touched on Ireland about every episode.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And, like... I know there will be a time when we don't talk about them, but yeah, they're just everywhere. I don't know. So they have this like tradition in Ireland called, I'm gonna butcher this. I'm very sorry. I didn't practice this. Samhain.
That's what I would think.
Samhain. Yeah, it's probably something totally different. But it's like acknowledging this spiritual crossover during like when it gets like darker, like longer periods of the day.
Okay.
It's sort of like opening up that portal, that crossover to the spirit world.
Okay, so it's like the dark part of the year, and then spirits, I guess, have access to our world?
Yeah, and I think it's similar to when we were talking about the Choctaw in the last episode, how, like, they keep that fire burning all the time to, like, kind of protect or, like, keep a separation between the spirit world and everything. So there's this reoccurring theme of, like, light and darkness, and we acknowledge it in all these different ways, whether or not we even notice, you know, because, like, we dress up to, like, scare off, like, the bad spirits, like, we're supposed to be intimidating the darkness, not the darkness intimidating us, you know? Yeah. So the Irish came up with those types of traditions. They also I believe, also were the jack-o'-lanterns. So they are basically responsible for a lot of those types of traditions. But, like, one thing that I think of when I think about, like, Halloween is, like, you know, costumes. That's, like, probably my favorite part of Halloween.
I love dressing up, and I love that you can pick one every single year, but you don't wear it twice.
Yeah, that's true. And I would say that if there is a repeat costume, at least for me, it's dressing up like a witch. Did you ever dress up like a witch at any point?
I dressed up as Hermione.
There you go. That's a witch.
She's a witch.
She's a witch. Yeah. So at one point, I feel like this is a rite of passage for a girl. You dress up at some point as a witch and at some point as a princess. You got to explore light and dark.
Yes,
you know?
And that includes like Disney princesses and all that.
And I think this is actually coming into fruition as we are actually going through this right now, is that the theme of this episode is like light and dark. And we are also in the time of the year, at least where we're located, where we are starting longer nights and shorter days. And we are all mentally preparing for that.
It's a struggle every single year.
Yeah, the seasonal depression will get you. But that's what we're here for. We're going to continue to pump out episodes and keep y'all entertained and a little curious about things. But speaking of witches, that's one of our like key symbols of when you think about Halloween and like darkness and villains and that kind of stuff. I wanted to talk about what other countries call witches, because we have found them to be like in pretty much every single culture. So I thought it'd be fun to like go through a little list of like the countries that we've covered so far in our episodes and just talk about what their word is for witch.
Sounds great.
So in Polynesia, it's kapua. There's not like a specific term that just means like, oh, you're a witch, because they're just kind of like, we don't really like talk like that,
Yeah.
you know? But anything that's sort of pertaining to witchcraft is kapua. In Puerto Rican, Latin American culture, of course, bruja is the word for witch, and brujeria is witchcraft, which I want to come back to, but I'm going to move on and we'll talk about the Irish words for witch. Kayak.
That sounded like it.
Kayak. Okay, cool. And then you have the Philippines, right?
Well, the Philippines, I don't know much about it. What I do know about with the Philippines is that they're super duper superstitious. And they're also Roman Catholic. They're scared of witches and stuff. They see the bad side of witches. And they also call witches bruja.
I was doing research last night about Latin American culture with brujeria, which we've already discussed in our Philippines episode and our Puerto Rican episode, that there's a lot of shared culture, even though like we're on the other side of the world from each other, because both islands were conquered and influenced by Spain. But I think it's interesting that indigenously, like, we share a lot of similarities as well. Like, maybe it's the island life, I don't know, the like hotter climate, I don't know. But brujeria existing in, like, I think our version of it in like Puerto Rico and stuff is very similar to the Philippines, where it's like very superstitious, the intertwining of like Catholicism, also the spirituality of like sort of like nature being haunted, and then also just being like the spirit like is present. I think is really like interesting. And as I was learning a bit more about Puerto Rican brujeria. My mom always said that like my grandmother was a witch doctor. And I was like, oh, I don't really know what that means.
Is this the one that was like she was a gypsy too? Or is that different?
This is on my dad's side. This is gypsy. So I've got witches on both sides. Which explains a lot. But I didn't even know this until last night, that I was like, wait, these are all words essentially for witches. So, like, gypsies, like Esmeralda, for example. Okay, so we kind of have to, I'm going to try to get into all of this, because there's a lot. But basically, there are 4 different types of witches. And according to Webster's Dictionary, we'll start with that. We'll start with the definition of a witch, according to Webster's Dictionary, is a person, especially a woman, who is credited with having usually malignant supernatural powers. Also, a woman who is believed to practice usually black magic, often with the aid of the devil or familiar. So already we're starting off on a negative note. But, like I said, my family has had some history of being a witch doctor and also gypsies. And that's also derogatory. I've learned that word, but I don't know what the other word is. But that was the word that was referenced in the documentary thing that I watched. Okay. So I apologize, but I also am referring to my own family, so I don't know what this means. Yeah. Come for me, but educate me. I want to change.
Hello, Cosmic Chismosos. Just a little correction here. I did do a little bit of research, and it turns out that the correct terminology is Roma or Romani. So we're no longer using the term gypsy. Apparently it's a derogatory term, and the term should be Roma or Romani. So just a little correction for you all, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Okay, so there are 4 different types of witches. There's the satanic witch / biblical witch, which, you know, is what initially Merriam-Webster's dictionary is pretty much defining here, which means that they've had a direct sexual relationship with Satan, and just basically that they get all their powers from worshiping Satan and stuff like that. Okay. So that's going to be your Hocus Pocus, which check the shirt.
Oh,
got a little Hocus Pocus shirt on today.
Kaylee is wearing a Hocus Pocus shirt today.
Yes. And I'm in the holiday spirit. So yeah, that's going to be your Hocus Pocus witches. That's going to be just your dark, just the worst case scenario witch. Okay? Then you've got the Sword and Shield high fantasy witch, the 1980s stuff, Lord of the Rings. Also, fun fact, fire and ice. Those were witches.
Oh, okay.
They're this high fantasy witch, which is also the type of witch that inspired, I feel this podcast. Yes, a combination of this one and the next one that we're going to talk about. But this Sword and Shield high fantasy witch is sort of think also Game of Thrones, Magic the Gathering, that kind of stuff.
They added on their own spin to witches.
Right. It's more of a stylistic witch, and they don't really know where their powers come from. They just kind of are witches, Then there's the pagan witch / natural witch, which also kind of inspired aspects of this podcast, in which we're going to dive a little deeper into when talking about Latin American countries and the Philippines, I believe. And pagan witches, they gain their power from nature, and they're more nature-based. So they're not really influenced by the Abrahamic religion, so no ties to the devil or Satan or anything like that. But there is a focus on willpower being seen as a witchy power. So if you have a lot of self-restraint and stuff, then that is a noble, it's that's a powerful characteristic to have, I suppose.
Yeah.
These witches use herbs, they read tarot cards, they celebrate the solstices, and they study the stars.
Okay, so is this a type of witch that looks into a magic ball or crystal ball?
I would say that's I think that you would just kind of associate that with maybe the Sword and Shield high fantasy witch, because that's more of a fortune teller anyway. I don't know. So pagan witches will study the stars and stuff. So I'm okay, so we're definitely, cool. So we're definitely flirting with the, Sword and Shield / pagan witch. And also, pagan and natural witches, they are morally gray, so they're not they're very neutral. They're not necessarily good or bad. They just are part of nature.
Okay.
And basically the same way that nature is both good and bad, it's it just is what it is. That's how pagan witches are.
Interesting.
And and so when I say pagan witch too, it's not it's not a Wiccans. These are just more of natural, those type of
That's
witches.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So
that would be the witch I would be.
Yeah. So that's also what you would call someone who practices voodoo or hoodoo is a pagan witch and stuff. So going back to what I was kind of talking about with the Puerto Rico part of the brujeria and Latin American and stuff, our representation of witchcraft. So we talked about in the Puerto Rico episode that West Africans were brought to the islands.
Right.
And so with that also was brought on voodoo, hoodoo, stuff like that. So everything that we talked about in the last episode with Marie Laveau and sinners and all that stuff, that stuff was also happening on the islands. So yeah, it was interesting for me to find out last night that, or to really put those things together, that when my mom always referred to my great grandmother as a witch doctor, she's talking about she was doing the root work and doing things like that, and my mom does that, and she has carried that on. But another aspect Another aspect of brujeria and what is it called? Santeria, I believe it's called, is that there's like a level of clairvoyance. And now you know my life, like because you've been around. But like I always felt like my mom like just knew what I was doing, knew what was like, always knew when to call, always knew like when to ask me certain questions, like always knew all these different things. And she would always claim like I have a bad feeling about this, or like I had a vision about this, or I had this and that. And that was like very common in my household, like for my mom to like talk about dreams that she's had, or visions, or gut feelings, or just like she'd have like full body reactions to things, you know. Was your mom ever like that?
She was. So there was one time where it wasn't towards me, but my brother, he wanted to go to a concert, and she said, I just don't think it's a good idea. My gut, or whatever it was. My mom also takes dreams very seriously too.
Yeah.
So she reads into them. But those are the only examples I can think of, but she did always had that feeling.
Yeah, the dreams thing. So there's a connection between, I think, the West African bringing over that voodoo and hoodoo spiritualism, and that being in, at least in the Puerto Rican culture. But it's just like a part of Latin culture to like have a certain level of like connection to the spirit world in some way, shape, or form. And so like my mom has it. My great grandmother had it. I believe my grandmother has it. And I have it. And I have these like dreams that like usually are associated with people being pregnant for some reason. But I think I've told you this, but I had a dream that my boss's wife was pregnant like years ago. And he goes, you know, he's joking around. He's like, oh, she better not be. And sure enough, a week later, he's like, you were right. My wife is pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. And he is Jamaican. So it's just funny because he fully was like, he's also like very much into this stuff. He's like, you know things. And he's like, I don't like that.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. That reminds me of Beyond Belief, that show.
Yeah.
It was an episode about a reporter. He was struggling to find a story. And then he had a dream about a volcano, wrote about it.
Wow.
And then the next morning, it actually happened.
Wow.
So, I don't know, maybe these are like superpowers a little bit.
I agree. I think there is something to it because like it's so, you know, so I've had that dream. I've had dreams about I don't know why it's always my bosses, but I've had dreams of like another boss too who was like pregnant and it was just crazy. But my mom has a lot, like, these, like, full-body reactions when death happens. And, you know, unfortunately this year I've lost 3 uncles. And my mom, beforehand, like, leading up to it, had these, like, she was like, I'm sick to my stomach. I feel terrible. Like, she's like, I think something bad's gonna happen. Like, and she felt this way before every single one of them. And so she always, like, she had this strong connection to, like, death and that kind of stuff and, like, tragedy.
Yeah, it seems stronger than an instinct.
Right.
Like, instinct isn't enough to describe that feeling.
Yeah. And, like, mine is more always leaning towards, like, something's going to happen that's, like, either bringing in new life or something that's, like, I get these, like, gut feelings of, like, where to go and, like, who to talk to and, like, that kind of stuff. And so, anyway, so I think it's really interesting that, like, this is a lot more present in, like, these cultures that have indigenous ties, you know, and not so much the same way in, like, European cultures, I feel. Mm-hmm. So, certainly not American culture when it comes to, like, our overall, like, way of being, I feel. But anyways, yeah, so that I think is like somewhere in that realm of like the pagan and like the natural witch, because they just have a connection to something that's like more spiritual, you know? And then you have the final witch is going to be your generic witch, which is like Halloween Town, Harry Potter, Kiki's Delivery Service. Like,
oh, shout out Bia.
Yeah, shout out Bia. So like, yeah, so all these different witches have been depicted in pop culture. So like Hocus Pocus, Harry Potter, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Midsummer, if you've ever seen Midsummer, oh my gosh, crazy movie. The Blair Witch Project.
That one was scary. We watched that as kids.
Yeah. that is a scary movie, and that's more of like that satanic like witchcraft stuff. I just listened to a podcast about that movie, by the way, too, and just...
Have you seen it since we were kids?
Yeah, I watched it.
It's a lot less scarier.
It is, yeah, because the real fear is like the whole getting lost in the woods.
That was horror for me. Yeah, I felt that anxiety, and then you see the same spots that you already were at.
Oh my god, that is a nightmare situation.
And this was in Maryland.
Yeah, that Appalachia area is no joke. No joke. And we have to talk about this in a future episode. We're definitely going to talk about this, but there is some major spiritual stuff going on in Appalachia, like all aspects of it. So like there's some witchcraft that's very specific to Appalachia. So it's interesting stuff, but we'll talk about that in another episode probably. A little history about witches. At least in the European sense, Catholics were starting to gain power. This was like I think 1200s and things like that, like post Crusades. They're starting to gain like a lot more power and influence in Europe. And we're pretty much talking about Spain because they kicked off these sort of witch hunts and like the rephrasing of what witchcraft is. So we're talking about like 1250s, and the Catholics did not like the pagan witches that were around that time. These witches were like, they would use like herbs as like medicine, like we talked about at the beginning, but then they would also like, they like knew how to like heal people. They had like, women had like more rights and stuff back then too, so it was like, so like these women were allowed to just like have a lot more like say in things, and it wasn't in alignment with the Catholic faith because, like I mentioned earlier at the top about the definitions, they weren't influenced by like any Abrahamic religions. So they were like, well, we kind of operate on our own system, and we're fueled by nature, and like we just like we help people and so on and so forth. Obviously, there are some negative things that were true about witches, like witchcraft could be used in a negative sense, so like they weren't like good nor evil, but like they operated from more of a neutral standpoint, so they would do sometimes like things that may not have been like, you know, cool. Yeah. You know, but they did do a lot to like, you know, serve medicinally. So there were two types of magic. There was white magic and black magic, which essentially also still like had some like racist undertones to it too, but they would define, there was like such a loose definition because they were trying to like basically put these women in a box. And I say women, it was majority women that were witches, but there
might have been a couple men.
Yeah, there were definitely some men, some male witches. There was some genderless witches as well. Like they just like were. So we're trying to like put these, you know, these like witches in a box and say like, oh, this is white magic versus black magic. Black magic was basically like if you were to like cast a spell or try to do some like, you know, things to like harm somebody, like either poison them or cast a spell or put a hex or curse them in some way, shape, or form. That was black magic, and like that was like the primary ones that they were like going after. And then white magic would be like, oh, you have to be helpful. But if you messed up, like if your white magic didn't work and didn't save somebody, that could be considered as black magic. So you had to have like 100% success rate, like to be a white magic witch and to like kind of dodge the hunt.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So eventually like these clashes of cultures like did not go well because, you know, Catholicism was like really taking off. Like these were like still that crusader energy. These like, especially because like all the leaders were men, so they were like, we have to dominate, we got to conquer all of these places. And like we talked about in our previous episodes, Catholicism was like running rampant. They were touching on the islands. They were sending literally anybody who had a good enough pitch, put them on a boat, send them to these islands to like do stuff. Magellan. And just allowed it to just like go ahead and run free. So there was like this clash of culture. And some of the laws at the time in England, because we're bouncing around Europe a little bit, in England was that women's inheritance laws protected them during these pagan times, because there were women who were like, we're just like not good or evil, we're just like, we are, what is it called, secular? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was like some inheritance that they were allowed to get because men owned property, so they were allowed to like inherit some land and riches and things like that, and that was not also in alignment with the agenda, I guess, of the Catholic Church. I wrote, Catholic Church, here we go again. They start influencing the laws, which then started to strip women of these entitlements. So now men they're like, oh, we got a land sale because someone died, and now this woman no longer is entitled to this land. Like, now we're like going to give it to the next guy.
Well, that's screwed up.
Right. And then so while this was happening and like women were more and more oppressed, they started having meetings like late at night to trade wisdom of the old ways to continue on this like right, to continue these pagan traditions and this pagan knowledge. So like learning like the herbalism and the healings and all these different things. And being a hag used to be a compliment.
Really?
Yes, because they used to say that getting old meant that you had more wisdom, which I'm all about.
Yeah, I'm all about that too.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes, so the fact that they were like older women, they would look up to them and be like, you have so much wisdom. And, you know, so they'd be like, this hag, she's
You
got
hag.
You hag.
Hag.
Next
We're
time you
gonna
see an
bring
older
that
woman,
back.
you hag.
You hag.
So, okay, so then there was like this clash between like the witches and the Catholic Church. But things started to really ramp up during the plague, aka COVID.
Oh, okay. So they're healers. What you gonna do?
Yep. Well, here's the thing is that the women were stepping up to heal all these people, but anytime that they failed, black magic. So they had to get that 100% success rate. Otherwise, they were going to be, jailed and tortured.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So they were blaming them. I mean, think about it modern day. Ever since COVID happened, we all have a strong distrust for the healthcare system. There's so much questioning now because we relied on all of them to be able to figure it all out.
Uh-huh.
But these modern day moments where big things happen, like the plague and like where they devastate populations of people, everybody always wants to blame somebody, you know?
Yeah.
And so during this time, during the plague, that's what the people wanted someone to blame. So they started to blame these witches because they couldn't blame like the church, you know, like they couldn't blame. They were just like, no, it was the women. They were probably poisoning them, or their witch magic didn't work
Because they failed once.
Yeah, I mean, who
twice.
knows? I mean,
right? Who knows?
But like, yeah, they. I tried to look it up, but it didn't have the exact like number that like made sense to me, but because there was like apparently 2 different types of plagues. There was like the Black Death or whatever. Anyways, but I couldn't figure out how many people actually died from the plague, but it was just like too many for them to be like, this is not cool, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so that's when the people started calling these healers witches, and then started this rhetoric that was like really negative around these women. They started to become jailed and tortured, and this was the beginning of the burning times. So, suspected witch Joan of Arc was the first big name to be burned alive in France, which kicked off France's witch hunts. There was also the Witch Hunter's Bible, which was written by Heinrich Kramer. So he wrote this book called the Malleus Maleficarum, which is also known as the Witch Hunter's Bible, also known as the Witch Burn Book, because all he did was talk shit in this book about women.
What was said in them?
Let me tell you. So, this is some of the shit that the Witch Hunter's Bible said. It said, what else is a woman but a foe to friendship, an inescapable punishment, a necessary evil, a natural temptation, a desirable calamity, a domestic danger, a delectable detriment. That's what I want to be called from now on. An evil of nature, painted in her fair colors. So he's like, they're not good. We don't like women.
Has he ever been laid?
Right? That's what I'm saying. Like, he sounds really frustrated.
What's his problem?
Well, I think also there was probably some more stuff going on with him. But, he also mentions that it should, therefore, if it be a sin to divorce her when she ought to be kept, it is indeed a necessary torture. For either we commit adultery by divorcing her, or we must endure a daily strife. So, there's just a lot of hate in there.
Yeah, something happened.
And then, so this book goes, like, New York Times bestseller. Like, everybody's like, yeah, we don't like these witches.
Oh, no. Okay.
And this clergyman Summers, he quoted, this was a quote found on the back of the book, among the most important, wisest, weightiest books in the world. Oh, my God. I'm like, how many books has he even read?
Yeah.
Heinrich Kramer, wow, that for whatever reason that name is just getting me. Heinrich Kramer, this German dude, he like wrote this book that essentially was like trying to exterminate women. He was just like throwing his case of why they were all a problem, and I think he was a raging homosexual, and that's probably why. Like,
probably,
yeah.
Because how can you love a woman?
Yeah.
And write this whole book about them like that.
That's what I'm saying. So I think he was a raging, frustrated homosexual that was afraid of coming out because the overarching power was the Catholic Church. So he obviously wasn't going to be a witch, but he was like, well, let me like get in good with the Catholic Church. He was always trying to like chum it up with the Pope and stuff. Like he was like name dropping and everything. He's like, I know the Pope. We're besties. And he was, like, always trying to, like, get people to agree with him. So, it didn't help that Heinrich Kramer was actually very well-spoken and well-educated.
Okay, so he was talented in what he was doing.
Yes.
He was good at what he did.
Right. So, people were, like, so the common people were just, like, he sounds smart, so, like, he's probably right.
Great.
And this was in 1484, by the way. Sorry. So throughout, like, many, many years, he was just, like, going after these women. I think it ended up being, like, 50,000 witches, like, quote-unquote witches, were burned at the stake over the course of...
Oh, sheesh.
Yeah.
I wonder how many were innocent and how many were actually guilty.
Exactly.
That's a big number.
Exactly. And, you know, considering that most of this was just a campaign... You know, it's just crazy. Yeah. But there was one guy that spoke up against it who was like a really well-educated guy. I think his name is Guadalay Adeline or something. I tried to look him up, but I couldn't spell his name. So.
Even autocorrect couldn't
get
it
was like, we don't know what you're talking about. But all the videos and all of my references are going to be linked in the show notes.
Yes, if you want to know more about it, then definitely check those links out.
Exactly. But anyway, so like Guadalay was a really well-educated person as well. So he was like the only one that was like well-educated that stood up against this rhetoric. It's because like as this campaign is going, they're just making up more and more shit. They're like, they ride brooms, they have black cats, like all these little like stereotypes start building and building. And this is what we call propaganda. And so like they're building this up, and then finally this guy like he comes out and he's like, look, this is getting out of hand, this is ridiculous, like it's impossible for like a woman to fly around on a broom, like that's crazy. He's like, it's impossible for them to like make a deal with the devil. He's like, the devil. And then he was a divination, so he like had all this education in like the Bible and all this as well, so he was like super well educated in all forms. Like he had all these different titles, like degrees and everything.
So he studied all that.
Oh yeah. So he was like, this is not possible. You can't just sell your soul to the devil and like get all these powers and everything. He's like, it just like doesn't work like that. And of course they jailed him and then tortured him and then forced him to admit or confess that he did make a deal with the devil, and that's why he said all this stuff, because he was trying to cover for himself. But allegedly he had made a deal with the devil, and that he himself was a witch, and he was just confessing to everybody all of a sudden after months of torture.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Because either way, he had to admit to what he probably didn't do to save his life. I'm hoping, did he survive this thing?
Yep, they did allow him to live out the rest of his life in prison.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's nice. Probably awful conditions, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that, like, you know, those things still continue to happen today. Like, if you know, say something that goes against what the overarching, like, theory is, or what the agenda is, you can go to jail or be deported or be so many different things. What we've talked about so far is that the women, in order to keep these practices alive, had to get together, talk indiscreetly, like in ways that we call gossip. But gossip, the word, had a meaning. It actually came from an Old English word called Godsibb. Godsibb is another word for godparent or someone who acts as a spiritual companion. It was also referred to as like a woman who attended a mother during and after childbirth, acting as companions and witnesses to that birth. So like your gossip was like just your women who like shared in these big life experiences and offered spiritual support.
Yeah. Julia Brown, she was also a midwife. And she knew a lot of information from everybody, and she knew their private and physical health.
Okay.
Because people would talk to her. But when they went to see her, because she was in the village, she was the only doctor in the village. So she knew stuff.
Yeah, so she was like the Godsibb of that village. Mm-hmm. Like, so she was there for like the birthing of all the children, and like she was there to offer spiritual and like medicinal help and all that stuff.
And it was known that she knew everything.
Yeah. So this Godsibb, which is just like supportive women, essentially, got that term got then transformed into the word gossip, which then was spun into like a negative connotation for women and how we communicate and interact with each other. So this is like another tactic dividing women, because like we're strong when we're together in numbers. Mm-hmm. And you know, much like when we talk, like when I mentioned those witches or the doctors, the healing during the plague, it was like those were all like spiritual women who also use like medicinal plants and stuff, that they just were waiting for them to fail to tear them apart. So this is like the beginning stages. Like we've got, you know, the Europeans going after any women like this. Now we have just even the way that we talk to each other is being demonized. So it wasn't until the Middle Ages, like we talked about, that these negative connotations started to begin. It became a derogatory term.
Okay.
And essentially they were like, they're like, oh, all women do is just chatter. So this is like gaslighting 101. This is like the beginning of gaslighting women whenever they talk to each other.
And you know how talking is kind of hard to enforce.
So that's why some things have continued to slip through the cracks, you know? Mm-hmm. Like some old wives' tales from today. Chicken noodle soup was like probably one of my favorite things to like that's passed down. I feel like just like a wholesome recipe like that is like
yes, and it's been so long that it's like it's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep. In my culture, Vicks Vapor Rub is sort of
my gosh. Yeah, it's the same thing for Filipinos too, but my mom doesn't. My mom does it. She uses it.
Yeah.
But not how they usually use it in the Philippines.
Oh yeah.
It's all over the place.
So, you know, so gossip was used to like continue to like pass this information along. Mm-hmm. How to treat different ailments. And that's like kind of the uptick. I've seen this like a lot more in today's like society. Like there's a big uptick in like herbal healers and stuff now. Like a lot of people are like getting more and more into it. Mm-hmm. But gossip can also be used to protect women, to just like pass around information for people who are just like, who might be dangerous.
Yeah.
Like,
there's other ways to communicate.
Yeah, exactly. So, like the Underground Railroad, for example, they used to communicate with like patterns on quilts and like, you know, different songs and like lyrics and stuff, and kind of like what we were talking about in the Puerto Rican episode with Sasa. The lyrics would like tell these stories, and that way those songs can be passed on, and that like gossip, whatever, that, you know, we all come together and talked about these things that were going on, but in discreet ways, like you're mentioning. You know, today, that part of the ways that we all communicate is because we used to communicate through songs, and these songs would like tell the stories of like other faraway lands, and if those songs like get repeated and repeated, then you're like sending a ripple of information out, right? And today, the equivalent to that, I think, is social media. So it's like these short videos, send it into the void of the internet, you know? And it's like, oh, did you see that video? Did you see that video? Did you see that video? But there's so much information going on right now that it's like kind of hard to like, to really sort through it and decide like what's real, what's not, what's accurate, you know?
Yes, what's twisted.
Yeah.
What's exaggerated.
We have to like think about like, how do we regain that? Like, how do we regain like that wisdom, you know? Because it seems like everybody's got a different take, different information, you know?
Right.
So not only has like TikTok allowed like all of us to be able to talk and like, because I've learned a lot through TikTok and everything, but it's also allowed there to be like more influence of propaganda. We've talked a bit about propaganda in other episodes, like the Irish episode where the English would like just basically talk bad about the Irish and say like, oh, they're lazy, they're drunk, they're all sinners, and like they all deserve this and that kind of stuff.
The gaslighting.
Yeah, the gaslighting. And that's why the Irish are everywhere. They love to ride for an underdog. So they're just like trying to constantly find underdogs. And they're like, yeah, get it. We'll hang out with you. So like there was that propaganda. The major one, like that we all know of, is like when the Germans used propaganda to discredit and like dehumanize the Jews back in the 1940s.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff still going on today that was coined as propaganda, you know, that like...
And it goes both ways.
Oh my God, yes.
All the ways.
Absolutely. So it's us versus them and all that.
Right.
But this like way of propaganda and attacking women and all this stuff, there's a huge, some really big poignant history of how that started in America. You know, we've talked about how in other countries like France and England, that they all started this attack on women, gossip, witches, like all that stuff. But the major one that made its way to the U.S. was the Salem witch trials.
O keep this woman, O King of Kings, and meet thy almighty O God.
So I'm just going to talk about a time in U.S. history where you were accused of something you didn't do. You had two choices to go about it. You could claim your innocence, which inevitably led you to being hanged, or you could claim your guilt, apologize, and then accuse other people for the same crime, regardless of their innocence, whether you believe it or not. Then that would set you free. So this goes back to 1636. The Puritans, a group of English Protestants, the ones who wanted to erase the Church of England, which we've also talked about. They settled in Salem, Massachusetts, and they called it Salem Village. So Salem Village is present-day Danvers, Massachusetts. The colonial Salem town is what is now Salem, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So all the witch trials and all that happened in present-day Danvers. And when they moved in there, like, they moved in, right? They settled and everything, and everybody hated each other.
Oh my God.
There was just so much hate. They battled with Native Americans, more specifically the Pequot, and the Wampanoag, along with other like French settlers that were around. So they had some outside enemies, and even in the village, they were fighting over resources and wealth. Like, the whole village itself didn't get along, so they all hated each other. So there's already tension.
Oh my god, just starting this country off on bad vibes. Like, just starting off Massachusetts and New England on bad vibes. I don't know why, but this is like, wow, it's like it's never been cool up there.
Yep, they were already arguing. They're already not getting along. They all hated
started
each other.
an HOA.
Yes, essentially, yes. And so the one problem that Salem Village had was establishing their church. And the ministers they had for the village, they were never ordained, so they didn't have any qualified leaders. And they had some ministers that were hired, but they didn't get their compensation. They didn't get paid. They weren't offered anything. And then in, let's see, so it was discovered 1636, so, give or take 50 years. This man named Thomas Putnam, who was one of, the big guys in the village, he recommended Samuel Parris to become their new minister. And he spoke all, super highly of him, because he was experienced and he would be perfect, for being the new minister in Salem Village. And so Samuel Parris, he was this owner of a sugar plantation, which he inherited from his father in Barbados.
Oh.
Yes. So he inherited that sugar plantation, but he ended up losing it because of a hurricane. And so he sold what was left of it, and then he moved to Boston and became a merchant there. And then while he had some time off, he would preach on behalf of the absent ministers around the town as a side hustle. So... so he was, I guess, experienced. Yeah.
A side hustle of preaching? Is that what you said? How do you
whenever they're absent or gone, these other ministers in their churches, I guess they would just call Samuel up and be like, hey, so-and-so is out today, can you come in and preach? Interesting. And I guess it was just enough to have him because he was a merchant too, so... I guess in his downtime.
I'm just imagining because there wasn't phones or anything, and so they couldn't text him and be like, "Hey, can you come in tonight or this morning?" And so they had to send somebody with a message on horseback, probably run him down to go find Samuel Parris.
And it is in Boston.
Yeah. So they were just going down and they're like, "Can you fill in today?" And he's like, "Oh, okay, I guess so." That's funny.
So Samuel Parris, when he was offered the job, he was like, what the hell? And then he packed his family up. He had his wife, and then he had a daughter named Elizabeth, but they called her Betty. And then his niece Abigail Williams, and she, Samuel had to adopt her because her parents were killed by Native Americans. And then also his enslaved woman Tituba and her husband John Indian. So he brought them along. And by November of 1689, Samuel Parris was ordained, and then so he was the first ordained minister in Salem Village. So at first, Parris gave the villagers a really good impression as being the new minister, and so, they started to like him. And then 2 years later, they started to kind of notice some things about him that were a little off, a little iffy, and... they kind of noticed some power tripping. Oh. He's starting to make these rules. He's starting to, seem a little greedy. You had to dress a certain way. He's just changing up things. And so villagers were always whispering about, his contract, because they're like, I think he got way more. I think he's getting compensated. I think we're paying him more than we think we are. Because he had 5 acres of land, a ministry house, and free firewood for the winter. That was thrown in as part of you get free firewood. And so people are like, free firewood? know?
Yeah.
He was also strict about who joined the church, too. He made all these rules, and he also wanted to spend a lot of money to make things, real and official. And the villagers were like, we don't need that. We don't need a bigger church. Why do you want to do all these add-ons? So he was already being side-eyed by these people. Then, the coldest winter ever in Massachusetts, which was February of 1692, So Paris's daughter, Betty, and then his niece, Abigail. Betty was 9, Abigail was 11, and they started acting really strange. And they were having fits, like screaming things, making weird noises, and at first I'm like, that's just a typical child.
Right.
But they were also able to contort their bodies into crazy positions.
Oh,
and
God.
the mention of God made them, like, freak out.
Like recoil and stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's like that scene in The Exorcism of Emily Rose when she was like, do you remember that? That was the
Yes.
scariest.
I remember watching that movie with you, and you fell asleep. And I had to watch that movie terrified on my own. So.
I mean, that definitely happened at one point. But when I saw that scene in theaters, I remember that scene haunting me. I think I just fall asleep like one of those like fainting goats, you know? It's like I just get scared, so I'm just like, I'm just gonna pass out.
So Samuel Paris calls in a doctor, and the doctor diagnosed them with being under an evil hand.
Ooh.
That was the diagnosis. And he
Okay.
was like, there's nothing I can do.
Wow.
Like, I can refer you to some, like, people who are in that field, but yeah, there's nothing. There's, like, one doctor. You know, there's always, like, these villages and
Right.
we have one doctor. And so the young girls, they were accusing 3 different women. And so there's Sarah Good, who was a beggar, pregnant, and she had a 4-year-old daughter.
Oh.
So she's number 1. Sarah Osborne, the second one, she was this elderly woman. She hasn't been attending church. And she was also in the middle of a court case with the Putnams. Remember that guy, one of the big guys that hired Samuel, or I guess suggested Samuel Paris?
Yeah.
That guy, she was in the middle of like she was suing them for some finances.
I didn't know people were suing people back then.
Yes.
Okay.
This is like
this
all
has
the
literally been America forever. Okay.
There is already a trial with this new village.
Damn,
You know, there's
yeah.
already people are suing each other, and so there were like some finances, and so the whole town didn't like her.
Okay.
You know, because she had the guts to actually sue these high.
Another woman speaking out. Hang her!
And Tituba, I love Tituba. She's my favorite. So she, again, was the enslaved woman under Samuel Paris.
Okay.
And there's speculation on where she's from. He did bring her from Barbados.
Oh.
He did do that. So, according to records, she could be from New Spain.
Okay.
Which can mean anywhere, like, in the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah, because that would be just like what Spain was claiming. New
Yes.
Spain is just what they call. Ooh, that's interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and then Samuel Paris's plantation, it was located in Barbados. So, and then possibly near Venezuela, just because of her name.
Oh, okay.
So really, she's probably from West Africa.
Okay.
Because
yeah.
enslaved people were pretty much from West Africa.
Right.
So and it's the Puritan sources too that called her Indian.
Oh, yeah. So they're just calling her whatever brown they decide. Okay, got it.
Okay, so first Good, right? So
Yeah.
she's being accused. She denied it. She was the one that was poor, pregnant, with the one with the 4-year-old. Her husband turned against her. They had her 4-year-old daughter testify that she was a witch.
Oh, my God.
Yep, and she claimed the daughter was pretty much told what to say.
Yeah,
I mean, you
how are
just
you
have
going
to-
to get the truth out of a 4-year-old? Like, they just say anything.
And then she gave birth in jail. The baby died, and then she was convicted and hung.
What the hell?
Yeah. She probably didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, the father. I don't know what the husband's problem is.
Oh, my God.
Any poor woman was pretty much a witch.
Add it to the list of reasons why I'm a witch.
Osborne, so she was the one that was against the Putnams, and she was like this older lady. She denied it, but then she was thrown in jail, and then before she was charged, she died.
Wow.
I guess because she was already old.
Yeah.
Then Tituba, her outcome was really different because she at first denied it, but then she eventually confessed. And Tituba was actually able to give testimony. That was another thing that I didn't think about. how come Tituba was able to give her testimony, because she's an enslaved woman.
Yeah,
Like,
interesting.
But they actually had rights within Salem Village.
Okay, cool. So she went on trial, and then what'd she say?
So she said, at first she said, no, I didn't do it. But then she finally was like, okay, fine, I did it. So she confessed to signing the Devil's Book, flying in the air on a pole, speaking cats, wolves, birds, and dogs. And then she also claimed that there were other witches among them casting spells and stuff.
Okay, this is very similar to what they had the guy that was that stood up for the women in France.
Really?
Yeah, he had to confess to all that stuff too. The signing the Devil's Book. Did you get into how you sign the Devil's Book?
No.
So I heard that the way that you sign the Devil's Book is by kissing the devil's other face, and you know where the other his second face.
That's not his butthole, is it? Oh no.
Yeah, it's his butthole. He said if you kiss his butthole, which is his other face, his second face, that's signing the deal with the devil.
No thanks.
Yep. So you signed the Devil's Book.
Well, Tituba apparently kissed the devil. Asshole.
But I just love that they, require this, because they had to tell her, what these things were for her to confess it. You know what I mean? Because, why would she just know what it means to sign the Devil's Book? Mm-hmm. So they'd be like, you have to tell him that you kissed his ass, basically. And
oh my God.
So in France and England, they were making everybody confess to those, 4 things or whatever. Yes, I kissed the devil's second face. I signed his book. I have a familiar. What was the other one?
There was the flying in the air.
Oh yeah, I rode a broom, basically, to get here. And it's they needed them to just check all these boxes, or they want to hear about them doing all this stuff.
Yes, and she was listing all of them.
Yeah.
I mean,
she did it all. Interesting. Okay, so then what happened?
Okay, so she also confessed to baking a witch cake that had rye and the girl's urine, mixed in. And then she fed it to the family dog. And I don't know, I could not find anything on how this works, because her reasoning for doing that was to see if there were other witches casting the spell. But what I couldn't find was, well, what does the dog do? What happens after the dog eats the cake? Huh. So if anyone knows, please comment.
Right.
Because I couldn't find it. I'm kind of interested in what the process is with these spells or whatever.
Yeah.
What are the rules, or what was supposed to happen with the family dog if he ate this cake?
How big was the cake? Did he get sick?
And it was her and John Indian both making the cake.
Oh, and I want to know what is that just what she said happened, or do we know if this actually happened?
That is what she said.
Okay.
Yes.
She's like, yeah, me and John both made this cake. And it's John's just why are you dragging me into this? I didn't make it.
John Indian, he just makes a random appearance.
That's so funny. He's along for the ride.
And then, but she also did say that her owner, Reverend Paris, he beat her until she confessed. So, a little bit more on Tituba. She admitted to practicing witchcraft, but the kind of witchcraft she was admitting to was European, but not African or Caribbean witchcraft. It was a different kind of witchcraft.
Huh.
And the differences between the two, she knew that the villagers and the people who were accusing her and all that, she knew all they knew was about the European style witchcraft. So, European style was mainly linked to the devil and Christianity beliefs. So, witchcraft equals the devil, demons, all that stuff,
Yeah.
Against God. But the African Caribbean witchcraft, that's different. And she knew that if she talked about that, they wouldn't believe her or know what she's talking about.
Right.
Because they don't know a thing about it. They just know what the Europeans believe in.
Yeah.
So, for, the differences between European and African, European, they only linked cauldrons and brooms because that's what poor women used. So, the pot, the cauldron, that's where they make the elixirs, the potions, all that stuff.
In reality,
broom.
she's like just trying to feed her family.
Yeah. And then also that takes me back to Shakespeare's play Macbeth, which was in 1606, and double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble.
Oh.
So Shakespeare even,
Yeah.
you know, he kind of inspired that too.
Damn, everybody's gossiping about these women and what they are. It's just
Right, don't
interesting.
tell me what I do.
Yeah.
You
Toxic
know?
gossip.
Yes.
So, okay, so what were you going to say about the broom?
Oh, the broom, that one, I couldn't find where that exactly came from, but that was another item that was used.
Yeah, so I read a little bit about that. And
Yay!
what the broom came from was that they claimed that they had seen them put like a balm on their broom and like ride their broom. So there was like some stuff that was like insinuating that possibly brooms were used for like pleasure, I guess. And maybe that's like what they saw. And they were like, again, just like shaming female like sexual
Just finding
gratification.
stuff.
Yeah.
Just finding stuff and then twisting it.
Right. And being like, basically, it's like hard to like dance around this stuff because it was like a big part of this witch hunt was basically that it was a lot about sex. It was like about women's self gratification. So like if they did use like a broom to like pleasure themselves, like then that was like a threat to men because like, no, you should be having sex with me, you know, that kind of thing. Like, how dare you have an orgasm without me? And then there was a lot of the reasons, like a lot of the things that they said that witches were capable of was having to do with like the male sexual organ. So it's like, oh, you just make him smaller or they can't perform. And yeah, so a lot of it was just like she's performing black magic on my penis. Like,
oh my god,
I know, and it's
Get
just
over it.
yeah, and you're just like, gosh, like you ever think that maybe you're the problem? Like,
Yeah.
So it's just so stupid.
Yeah. And I mean, all that has carried on into today.
Yeah, in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, like there's still this like there's like a resurgence now of like talking about women being like, you know, whatever, evil or this or that. And it's like, I don't know. It's just, it feels so like, what? Like, what? Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, we're just human beings, just like men are.
The cauldron one gets me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm sorry that I'm cooking dinner.
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm a witch.
Right.
And then there's African, you know, so that's like the European belief, they make up their own stuff.
Right.
And then African, where hoodoo originated from.
Yes.
So they did believe that there was good and bad.
Yeah.
So the good being the healers. So they used like the herbs and everything like that. You know, they did good. And so West Africa, they believed that life was about balancing and keeping harmony together within the village, and this includes the living, the dead, nature, and the spirit world.
See, I'm on board with all that.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's how I felt when I was reading into it.
Yeah.
If something bad happened, the bad stuff, the curses, would be like no crops, and then sickness, like something spiritually was off. And I can believe that too.
Sure.
You know? And so if something weird or unfortunate happened to somebody, they would go to these healers.
That's actually what Elijah was talking about with the crops, is that, because he was explaining to me about how someone had offered him a bad crop, and it's like if it was a bad crop, then there's like a negative spirit attached to it, so you're like trying to like give off like a hex to somebody.
I forgot you even told me about that.
Yeah. So it's definitely happening. It's definitely part of that whole thing.
Yeah,
So,
that
interesting.
has to relate. And then the bad witches, they use secret magic to harm people, and they were said to cause these, like the sickness and destroyed crops. So the bad witches and the healers, I'm assuming they kind of bounce off each other, or they try to, I guess they might have
like
some
counteract.
type of war, you know?
Yeah, like, well, I guess that like makes sense. There's like a spiritual war type of thing happening, and there's okay, so I wanted to mention too, I forgot to say the rest of the world, around the world, names for witches, but the name for a witch in West Africa is Obia.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's like I think that's more of like the practicing the healing traditions.
So Chichiba confessed all the European stuff. So she kind of knew what she was doing.
Okay.
But that ended up her just going to jail. So after all that, like, there's more accusing, false confessions, like, villagers lived in fear. It was just a whole mess, like this hysteria. And then Paris was such a pot stirrer because after Tituba's confession, since Tituba was Paris's enslaved woman, that linked him to the witchcraft.
Gotcha.
So he started pointing fingers to other people to kind of get that attention off of him. So Paris starts accusing villagers for little stuff like missing a day at church.
Must be a witch.
One lady accidentally slammed the church door.
Witch behavior.
This is what he did.
That's crazy.
Yes, he's a jerk. And so she was accused of witchcraft by Paris because, oh, the wind, or, oh, I slipped, or, sorry, I fell, like...
Right. She gave me a dirty look. That's crazy.
And so all these villagers were scared of him because he was just really quick to point that finger, and he had power.
Right.
Finally, what stopped this whole thing was that accusation reached the wife of the governor of Massachusetts. And then he was like, whoa, hold on. Let's stop. Let's go ahead and just pardon all these people. Let's just forget about this.
We gotta shut this shit down. It's getting crazy.
It ended as quickly as it had started.
Oh my gosh. That's so interesting. And funny because, like, in Europe, it was way successful for so long. Like, it happened for so long. In Salem, it was like, cut it out. We're done.
This was a year and 3 months.
That's not that bad.
Yes, that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
That goes by fast. And Tituba, she was set free.
Right.
And then she lived a long life.
Wow, good for her.
Yeah, good for her. Her and John Indian.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, good for them.
So by the end of this, 200 plus people, men and women, were accused of witchcraft. 19 people, 16 women and 3 men were hanged.
Wow.
Yep, on Gallows Hill. And then they had this 80-plus-year-old man, like, smashed to death with stones and stuff because he wouldn't follow the rules of the witch trials. But still, besides all the delusion and chaos with witchcraft, what happened with Abigail and Betty? What were they doing? Why are you contorting your body?
Right.
What's going on here?
Acting? Are they...
Yeah, so what made them act that way?
They're our first Oscar-winning actresses.
So one speculation is that the hallucinations and the behaviors came from fungus.
I do know that I'd heard that there was that there were rumors that season of crops was like really bad. So similar to like the potato famine, where like they lost all their potatoes to the fungus that year due to like a bad season. Mm-hmm. And like I think at that point it was like a really wet season, so I would assume maybe something similar in New England during that time.
Also too, they did have that big snow.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then the fungus from like that wheat, they said was possibly giving them like those hallucinations and stuff.
So maybe.
Yeah.
That might have been the whole thing.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, but that would be the foundation. That would probably be a large foundation of their nutrition because, it's really cold up there, so they probably weren't yielding a lot of, like, fruits at all or veggies
not really
and
any,
stuff.
because they're just getting established.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so they were, like, probably living off of bread and everything.
Yeah, and they also, that was part of the fight within the village was food. So
gotcha.
The one last thing I do want to mention though is this man named Cotton Mather. So Cotton was a minister in Boston who wrote this like book about a woman who performed witchcraft.
Yeah.
And it was published in 1689. So that was the year before the Salem witch trials occurred. So Mather's book was a very well read and popular book at the time. It was like the Harry Potter of Puritan New England. It was very popular. And so this book was about an alleged witchcraft practice involving a washerwoman who is a woman who does laundry.
Yeah.
And she was named Goody Ann Glover, and she lived in Boston. And around this time, Goody was a nickname for good wife. So it was like the missus of the time. Okay. So they would call you Goody Kayleen.
Huh.
Goody Ashley, don't ever call me that.
Right?
So Anne Glover, she was from Ireland. The Irish always showing up.
That's so funny.
They're always popping in to say hi.
That's so funny.
And she could only speak a little English. Instead, she spoke her primary language, Gaelic.
Wow.
Yep, so everybody thought she was weird because they're like, why aren't you speaking English? Like, what are you saying? So people thought she was weird, and she also worked on a sugar plantation in Barbados, just like Tituba.
She's just traveling everywhere.
Yeah, they're going everywhere. And then people, you know, they thought she was strange, and the children who lived around her started acting strange too. And so this occurred in 1688, again, before the witch trials. Yeah. And then Mather wrote about it to prove the existence of the devil, because he was a minister, so he was trying to, you know, prove and scare people that witchcraft is real.
Yeah.
And they found this book in Samuel Parris's library. So Samuel Parris has been reading this stuff. And so that's probably what was helping him come up with all this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he was educating himself.
He's perpetuating this shit.
Yes, so they had a book too that was just hating on all this stuff.
Well, that's like that book that I was telling you about, the Malleus Maleficarum. Malleus Maleficarum.
What year was this written in?
This was in like the 1400s.
Sheesh. So, Kayleen.
Yes.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
What is the zodiac sign for the Protestants that burn the witches?
The Protestants that burn the witches, I would say they are... I'm thinking, like, if they're pretty, like, easy to, like, coerce or, like, maybe quick to make a decision.
Are they impulsive?
A little bit impulsive.
Or, easily brainwashed?
Maybe. Maybe. Or just, like, kind of just not thinking too far ahead.
Yeah.
Just thinking about their own survival.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I want to go with Aries.
Ooh.
But I'm not sure because, but you know what? I'm just going to go with it. Aries, I feel like you would be like, all right, let's light it up. We just start a fire. I don't care what the reason is.
Yep,
you know?
That's just kind of like our fire episode.
We're just going with it. So we talked to that, or we pretty much covered that, like, gossip was originally something that was supposed to be good. Like, the word deriving from something that was good. Like the women who were there for you when other women were giving birth, or like there for like spiritual support and all that stuff. So all those women, so we've covered that like gossip was a derogatory term for something that was actually good. The Godsibb, the collection of women that were there for spiritual support and, you know, there to support women through like these big changes in life, like child support and everything. So, and while gossip can sometimes tear people down and, you know, lead to something, you know, really terrible, like the witch hunts of Salem and France and England and everything, basically we just want to focus on the good things, the things that are supportive and what makes women strong and come together. So
right, and it's just having to learn how to pick the good ones out of the bad.
Yeah. And just to have a little bit of discretion and discernment, you know, with things. And, but ultimately, you know, we want to be women supporting women, and not just women, but like everybody supporting each other and spreading information amongst each other that, you know, is for good causes, like, you know, wisdom and healing and justice and all that stuff. So, having said all that, I guess like at the end of every episode, we remind everybody to keep gossiping.